Good morning.
Morning, Steve. We'll get started momentarily. Let's see, is Zev behind you? Good morning, Joel. You know what? It was here. I think it was taken to something else. Not back.
Yes, sir.
Oh, there it is. I hope you don't, if you want
No,
to.
it's okay. I'll keep my mouth shut except when I eat. Whatever. Okay, so we have people stepping on birds and dropping cows on birds.
I didn't see that in my Gemara.
The first thing,
They didn't drop cows on birds.
cow crushes the bird.
No. The bird accidentally got under the cow. That's what happened.
No, so he wanted to teach the halacha, so he dropped the cow on the bird. The cow is on the bird.
That goes with the marble cake.
Yes.
There's another thing about something about the deck, playing cards on the deck. Why couldn't
I think that was the Titanic.
it?
Whoa.
Let's see. I'm gonna sit up here so I can leave early.
Good morning. So because we're now doing Parshas Noah.
Noah.
So what did Naama serve for
This is a
on the
bad
marble?
joke. That's the
On
dessert.
the table.
That's their answer.
Marble cake. Right.
Sounds
I'm
give
leaving.
you 2/3 of the pumpkin.
I know.
All right,
Where is
gonna-
caught where
I'm
in
leaving-
the base measures?
I'm
The
leaving
coffee?
early today.
Oh.
And then Wednesday afternoon, we're going out to.
Yeah.
I thought they were davening.
They are.
They are.
Yeah.
But they did.
Coffee doesn't take up much room.
Yeah, but
All right, I'm going to start the. Harvey, are you on? Or just Steve? Okay. All right, I'm going to start.
Just me.
Just you, okay. I assume he will get on shortly, hopefully. Okay, learning sponsors. This way we'll Sue and Arnie Garelick in memory of Malka Proman and Philip Mann, and Yisrael David ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Beryl ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Yosef Meir ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, and Yerivka Pro Rosner bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch. And in memory of family murdered in the Holocaust, Harav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bat Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Adia bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. Shall share her children and grandchildren, the memory of her uncle, founding member of BRS, Dr. Israel Brook, Yisrael ben Harav Akiva, Marcia Federbush and family, the memory of her husband, Dr. Oriel Paul Federbush, Oriel Pinchas ben Harav Shimon, Sharon and Fred Liska, their family and many friends, the memory of her dear mom, Harriet Friedman, Edelbas Yaakov, Leslie and Gail Kaplan in memory of their parents, Harry and Marjorie Sedell, Irving and Pearl Kaplan. Friends of Avi Gitler, Avram Meir ben Shimon and Martha Gitler, Cherna Bat Yeshaya. Children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren of Toby Paris, Saratova Bat Yisrael Dov in her memory. Friends of Joe Wolf, Yosef Ben Chaim, Charlie Gelfenstein and Sam Levine in memory of Ramona Levine, Rachel Mata Bat Asher. A Month of Learning by Ron and Sue Podolsky in memory of his father, Tzvi Ben Pinchas. Is he back?
But he'll be back today.
Phyllis and Chaim Reese in memory of her mother, Malka Bat Zev. We have A Day of Learning today by Sharon and Fred Lisker in memory of her grandfather, Yaakov Ben Yitzchak. And also, that is it. May the Shemas have an Aliyah, Crank Rafia, Velti Yeshir Shem Latzliah, and the Chol B'nai Israel a good gebench jar. Okay. All right. Okay, again, a reminder that I asked, oh, see, Erwin.
Guessing the wrong room.
I asked Erwin and Mel to follow up and trying to make the arrangements for the Siyum for theoretically on Monday, the 11th. They will report to us when their arrangements are, okay, and then we'll send something out, an email, okay? Also, that Monday, the 11th, we start Gemara Rosh Hashanah, okay? All right.
You're gonna be here?
As far as I know, if the plane leaves New York at 7 o'clock,
Okay,
I should get
all right,
home,
I'll still prepare.
all right, and be fine, okay? All right, so where do I want us to start this morning?
Third line,
I think that might be good,
second line.
okay.
on
I want to start actually on the bottom of Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis, right? Ve'en melav ninet ra'afin. We don't white hot the tiles. Ma'i ka'avid. Why? What do we do? Amar Rabbi Bar Chana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. He says, Hacha b'ra'afin chadashim askinen. We're dealing with new tiles. Why? Mipnei shetzarich la'avad kan, because we have to test them lest they will burst if they're heated. Right? Va'amrela, and others say mipnei shetzarich lahasman, because they have to harden. The reason I wanted to start there is because that issue of lahasman is going to come up later. All right, Bob. Now here we can close the door. Okay, so going on, top line on Lamadaled, Va'amrela, right? We said lahaska. Another said to harden them. Right? Tanu hatam, Tanan hatam. So we taught in a Mishnah there. Darsa, if a individual or an animal stepped on a chicken, right? Oh, shatarfa, bakotel, or they threw the chicken against the wall. Okay. Oh, shiratzatsta. Okay, or maybe they trampled, stepped on. Okay, an animal did that, okay, as opposed to the person. Or mifar chesed, or the animal, after it was thrown or knocked or whatever, stepped on, whatever, it still was twitching. Okay, all right, you throw it again, great. Okay, right, and it was still around for after 24 hours, but shachta, and slaughtered it, kishera. It is considered edible, slaughtered and edible, right? Amar Rabbi Elazar, so that's a challenge.
Not only edible, but it's fit.
Okay,
Otherwise,
right,
you're
right,
allowed
but
to
why is that important? Because that's a challenge to the previous statement. Okay, if all of these things, in other words, who's to say that you can't go ahead and do something to these tiles, right?
Yeah, next.
Okay, so let's see. Amar Rabbi Elazar Bar Yana, he says, Mishum Rabbi Eliezer ben Antigonus, Tzricha B'dika. But wait a second, he says, don't those animals still need to be examined, right? Okay, because if it's if it needs to be examined after the fact, and it's still seen to be acceptable, it can be considered kosher. So why can't the same thing apply to those tiles? Right? By mine Rabbi Yirmiyah mi Rabbi Zera. And so Rabbi Yirmiyah asks Rabbi Zera, Mahu l'shachta b'yom tov. What about taking it as an animal and slaughtering it on Yom Tov? Mi mechazkinen ra'uta b'yom tov olo. Do we allow for such a flaw, I'll use that word, okay, or problem in the animal, okay? Is that acceptable or not? The implication being that if the bird is treifa and not viable for Yom Tov, okay, the slaughter then is also of the meat is not available. It's not the case, okay? Amar leit Tanina, we learned this. Ein melavnin et harafim l'tzlot bahem. We're not permitted to white hot, I use that phrase, the tiles in order to roast on them. Vahavin and ban, we discuss this. Mai ka'avid, what then is to be done? Va'amar Rabba bar Chana amar Rabbi Yochanan, what did he say? Hacha bera'afim chadashim askinen mepnei shetzarich lebadkan. Here we're talking about new tiles because they have to be checked, examined, right? Okay, we have to be concerned that they could be prohibited if they were to crack, the same way the animals would be prohibited, okay, if they might be treif, right? Not appropriate. Amarle, he says to him, Anan, we, mipnei shetzarich lechasman matniten. We teach it not because of lebadkan, but we teach it because of lechasman, that it has to be hard. Right?
One thing I have with the chicken business, say that thing happened every yontif. Now that chicken's not edible that day. You have to wait 24 hours before you can chef it. So how to be open for a flavor on yontif?
Mike,
because he knows. In other words, to make something mukhan, you have to say, I plan on using it.
Right.
Or at least I'm not making it muktzah.
Right.
So he says, oh, if this thing is alive, we'll make chicken soup. If it's not, we will eliminate the soup from the menu.
Even though it's not edible, that thing.
right.
Okay.
No, it has a cheskes chai. It's not edible anyway. Any animal that's alive is not edible. It has a cheskes chai.
But this thing is not, you can't even chef it. You have to wait 24 hours before you can chef it.
That's correct.
Right.
So it's not edible.
But he knows he's gonna, just like if you know you're gonna eat something for shalashudas.
Right. Okay.
And food bechlal is never muktzah, and it's omed la'achila.
Okay, let's go on. Thank you both. Good comments, both. Amarle, he says, Anan mipnei shetzrich lechasman matniten. We teach it because of that. Matniten la. Okay, new Mishnah. New Braita. Tanya, echad mevi et haor, one brings the fire. Ve'echad mevi et ha'etzim, and one brings the wood. Ve'echad shofet et ha'kedera, and one places the pot on the stove. Ve'echad mevi et hamayim, and one puts in the water. Ve'echad noten b'tocho tavlin, and one puts in the spices, right? Too many cooks spoil the broth. Ve'echad magis, right?
And the trampled chicken flies in by itself.
Then one stirs it. Kulan chayavin, says the Braita. They're all what? They all are chayav, right? Right. So what happens? Vahatanya. But we're also taught the following Braita, right? Acharon chayav v'kulan pturin. That the last one to do the act, in other words, finishing up the right, is the one that's chayav. The rest are exempt. Lo kasha, he says, that's not a problem. Ha, da'aite ur me'ikara. Ha, da'aite ur levaso. One was the one who brought the fire originally at the outset. One was the one who brought the fire at the end. So what happens? Bishlem lekulhu ka'avde ma'aseh. That's acceptable and understandable when everybody is involved in doing a deed, an act. Ella shofet et kedera mai ka'avid. But the one who simply puts the pot on the stove, okay, parallel, remember to that story we said we had in the Gemara before, that you had the two barrels and they put the pot on the barrel, but there it's a different issue, right? There it's the issue of making an ohel. Okay, here we're talking a little different issue,
He didn't do anything.
right? So what did he do? Right, that's the point. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, what did he say? Hacha b'kedera chadasha askina. We're talking about a new pot. Umishum lavon ra'afim naguba. And because the fact, all right, that the tiles are red hot, it came in contact with it, and therefore that it could be the issue there, right?
The pot is a new clay pot,
Right.
and by putting it over the fire,
You're
that's
finishing.
makabah patish. You're
True.
finishing your
It
fire.
really satisfies the issue of the chasman.
But the Gemara does not answer if the last guy brings the fire, then all this guy did was place down the pot. It
Mhm.
still is. In other words, he did a malacha only if the fire preceded him, and the Gemara never deals with that.
Didn't touch it. Right? Tanu Rabbanan. Let's hear a new brighter. Tanur v'kirayim chadashim. Okay, we have a new oven or a new stove. Okay, harehein kechol hakelim hanitlin b'chatzer. That they are like any other utensil that's taken from the courtyard. Aval ein sachino tam shemen, but you are not permitted, okay, to rub them down or polish them, okay, with a cloth with oil. Ve'ein tashin otan b'matlit. Again, we don't polish them with a cloth even without oil. Ve'ein mafigin otan b'tzonein. Okay, and we cannot put any kind of cold water on it, right? Kedei lechasman, in order to harden them. Notice that issue comes up again. Ve'im b'shvil la'afot. But all of this was done to cool down that oven because you need to bake your challah on Yom Tov that same day. Harei zemutar. Then it is permitted.
The animals,
We're not dealing with the animal there. This is a new item, an oven. Okay? Remember, we had this issue of you couldn't do these tiles because you're going to harden them. That's like Michael suggested, patish, the final act of making it an item. Okay? Question is, does that apply to the oven or to the stove? Apparently, these other acts do.
he says,
Right?
but at the start of the Baraisa, it talked about scald the head and legs of an animal. The animals
No, then
that's chefed already, or
that's the next brighter. Okay, that's the next
No.
one. Tanu Rabbanan, the new
okay,
brighter
okay.
teaches Molgin et harosh v'et haraglayim, that one could scold or singe the head or the feet of the animal. All right, the legs. Umahav havin, and one can. Okay, that would be also like singeing it. Otan ba'or, with the fire. Aval ein toflinotam b'charasit. But we do not cover them with, and here's a difference in explanation. Charasit, according to one translation, was clay. According to another, was lime. Okay? In other words, we don't. A depilatory, exactly. Velo ba'adama, and not with some kind of earth. Velo b'seed, now that clearly is lime. Ve'en gozazinotan b'misparayim, and we cannot cut the top off with special kinds of scissors. Ve'en gozazinet hayerik, b'tisporet shalom, and we cannot cut off the top of certain kinds of vegetables, particularly a variety of artichoke that was common there with its special kind of scissors. Okay, Corin had an interesting picture of the kind of scissors. If you've ever seen how they clip wool off sheep, okay, the way that kind of a clipper, it's like a rounded, and then it has long blades, okay, coming out from it, okay? So that's what it's referring to. Aval metaknin et hakundris, okay, he says, right? But we can repair, arrange, right? For a kundris is a large baker's oven or a large furnace. Ve'et achvayot, or large urns, umasikin va'ofin bepurne, okay? And we can heat up and bake in a purne, which is again another kind of, right? It's another kind of furnace or oven. Mechamin chamin ba'antichi, and we can heat up water in a antichi is again a kind of large urn that was used. Ve'enofin b'porni chadasha shema tipachat. But we right? But we can't. It's like a samovar, right? Okay, but we cannot bake in this large baker's oven or furnace. And a new one, shema tipachat, lest it break, explode, kind of thing. Okay. Tanu Rabbanan, another bright. Ein nofchin b'mapuach. We're not able to use billows, okay, to blow, to increase the fire. Aval nofchin b'shfuferet. But one can blow into a tube, okay, and to increase the flame. Ve'en metaknin et shipud. We cannot repair a spit. Ve'en mechadedin oto. And we cannot sharpen a spit. Tanu Rabbanan, another bright. Ein mefatzein et hakaneh litzlot bo maliach. We cannot crack or break a reed in order to use it to roast as like a spit, to roast a salted fish. Aval mefatzein et ha'agos, but we can crack or break a nut, the matlit, using a cloth. In other words, wrap a cloth around the nut and either then bang it or hit it, things like that. Ve'en chosheshin shema tikra. And one doesn't have to be afraid lest the cloth will tear.
What is the wrong with using a cloth?
You're concerned that the cloth will you're tearing something.
No, but
That
that's not
hitting
what-
it,
But
No,
that's destroying it. Why would destruction?
That's
It's-
it, that's why I said ain't kokoshin.
You don't have
Oh,
to, right?
I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
All right? Mordechai, you wanted to add a little.
The issue is, there's a reasonable chance that the sharp edge of the shell will cut the cloth. So you might have thought they made a gazelle, like they do in a lot of other cases, because our result would be they do not make the gazera, and this is going according to Rav Shimon, who says that even if you tear it, since you didn't want it to tear, it's not.
Davar shalom et kavein.
And the problem with the bellows is that it's a professional.
It's a tool.
professional
Yeah, it's a tool. It's an everyday kind of thing.
Yeah,
So
but if you
again-
have good lungs,
So remember, we keep saying that a part of the theme in a number of these Mishnayot is the issue of shinui. Okay?
But why can't you use the bellow? Do you use a hammer to crack a nut?
Good question.
it's
Okay,
Yeah.
think of it for a second, because Michael's got an answer for you, but I'm going to have a different answer. Michael, what's your answer?
no, it's the professional tool. You use the bellows to heat up the oven you can do that with a shinoi, like blowing through a tube, but doing it with a tool is the normative that a baker would use. It's a maisa uman.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
That-
so
it's a
I was
maisa
going to
uman,
phrase
a
it
skilled
differently.
worker.
I was going to phrase it differently. You have a issue of muktzah mechamat kis, all right, where an artisan does not want his particular utensils to be used. That's a different variety of muktzah. Remember, we talked about the idea that whether it was extended muktzah or specific kinds of muktzah. Okay, I think it was last week, right? So that was part of that's why I said a little different answer, but it's same as direction.
Better answer.
Okay, right, because of that issue. So those would be reasons that you would say, again, clearly, whoever it is, rather Rabbi Shimon or Rabbi Yehuda, they would both say that those kind of items would not be usable. Whereas a hammer may not necessarily be a artisan's utensil. It could be an everyday, right? There are, I remember. Okay, no, but I remember that they used to sell some places a bowl of certain kinds of nuts, and they would include a little hammer in it, okay, because of that. All right, walnuts maybe. All right, would be an example. Okay, new Mishnah, right? As we go on the bottom of Lamed Dalet. Matnitin says, our Mishnah, Va'od, and further, Amar Rabbi Eliezer, Omeid Adam al Hamuksa. So we come back to that issue again. Remember, we said muksa here meant the storage area. Okay, could have been in the back of the house. All right, Marvin, you all right?
I think this is on the roof with the grogeris with some.
All right. Yeah, Marvin,
Marvin,
you okay?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the section about cutting the,
What's with Marvin?
Okay,
we're cutting the vegetables.
okay. Again, think of it this way, Marvin. All right, you got a specific utensil.
yeah,
Okay, I'm the guy who owns that utensil. All right, and I like to use it particularly, as I said, for doing the wool on sheep. Okay, so I don't want you taking that to go cut your vegetables on Yom Tov. Okay, because why? You're going to dull the blade.
You know,
Okay,
Rashi explains it a little different. He
Yeah.
says that I'll pick a radish as an example.
yeah,
Typically, you pull the radish out of the ground and then you cut the leaves off because you want the bulb. So if people see you snipping the leaves off a bunch of radishes, you may get the impression that you just harvested them. And so it's a gezerah.
okay, that's Rashi's
Yeah,
explanation.
well, because you're using the normative trimming tool. So it looks like you're doing a farming process.
Activity. All right,
But if you break them off by hand, that would be
that's
okay.
different. Okay, so again, V'od Amar Rabbi Eliezer, Omeid Adam ala Muktzah, a person could stand by, be there present where there's storage area. This is a storage area where the figs and dates are being dried, so it's probably the roof, right? Erev Shabbat, B'Shvi'it. He can do that on the eve of Shabbos during the Shemitah year. V'omer, and says, Mikan ani ochel l'machar. He designates verbally, okay, as Michael had said, he designates verbally this area of the roof where these dried figs are drying, okay, that's what I'm going to eat tomorrow. V'omer, mikan ani ochel l'machar. The Chachamim omrim, but the sages say, ad sheyir shom. What does he have to do? He has to mark it, designate it clearly. In other words, the amirah, the statement, is not enough. Okay? He's got to do something physical, right? Vayomer mikan va'ad kan. And then say, okay, this quarter, this corner, etc., of the roof where there's the items, that's what I'm going to have. Right? Gemara, what happens? Tznan hatan. We taught in a Mishnah elsewhere. Tinokot shetamnu ta'enim me'erev Shabbat. Children who hid dates all right, from Erev Shabbos. Why? Because they wanted to eat it. That was going to be their Shabbos, Oneg Shabbos treat, right? Vishachachu, and they forgot, right? Velo asru, and they forgot and did not tithe these dates. The Motzei Shabbat, okay? What happens? Lo yochlu ela im kain asru. They can't eat them till they tithe them,
Even their rye.
right? That's okay. So in other words, they can't even think of it as a snack. Utnan nami, and it was taught also in a Mishnah. Hama'avir te'enim b'chatzero l'ktzot. One who, let's say, sets up or set out dates in his courtyard to dry. Banavu b'nei veto, his progeny and his household, ochlin mehen
How do
ara
you,
turim, but they can eat them even as a snack, okay, and they're exempt. Why? Because they were not brought into the house.
how do you hold this? How do you hold this to children who have taken this and hid them, and you may not even know, and then you're telling the kids that they can't eat them after they've done that? I mean, it becomes a real problem, I think.
Where could the children have brought them in to hide them? In the house.
Yeah.
One up. Okay. All right. So by me,
Yeah, I think there's another issue that the Agavurcha is teaching a couple of things. Number one, that children can, at least with the Evid, take Trumas and Maestras. And number two, that even as an Achilas Arai on Shabbos has a certain chashivas. The Reisha talks about Shabbos, the Sefer, where it says you can eat a rye from the pile of figs, is talking about a weekday.
okay. You got that from Rashi?
I didn't yet look at the Rashi.
Okay. By mine Rabba me Rav Nachman, he asks. Shabbat mahu shetikva muktzah lemaaser b'davar shelo nigmara melachto. So he's asking the question here. Okay, clearly regarding Shabbat, can you establish, I use tikva here in that way, like something where it's muktzah for designating it for tithing, okay, if it's not a completed act, if it's not completely done.
Like that already with the grain until he smooths it out and brings it into the house. He can take some. He can have.
He could have it as an arai, exactly.
The same thing. Yeah.
That's the question. Mi amrina, do we say kavan dichtiv v'karata l'shabbat oneg kav'a? Since we say Shabbat has a specific designation, and therefore that automatically fixes va'afilu b'davar shelo nigmara melachto, and even something where the work isn't completed, you still have the requirement to tie, right? On Shabbat then, which, right? Odilma b'davar shenigmara melachto kav'a, right? B'davar shenigmara melachto kav'a, b'davar shelo nigmara melachto lo kav'a. Okay, something where it's finished, yes, it's fixed, but something where the work is not finished, as in that question of bringing it into the home. Okay, for example, that it's not. Amar le, so he responded to him. Shabbat kovat bein b'davar shenigmara melachto, bein b'davar shelo nigmara melachto. Shabbat establishes it. Okay. Okay. In other words, whether the work is done or completed or not. Amar le. So in other words, if you're going to have a snack, then the implication is that Shabbat, okay, because of its unique status. Amar le said him, ve'ema Shabbat dumya dechatzeh. But I might say, maybe I should compare Shabbat to the example of the courtyard, where we said there that RE is permitted, right? Machatzer eina kovat, ela b'davar shenigmara melachto. Whereas in the courtyard, it doesn't fix, and I'm going to fit in here, the requirement of tithing, okay, right? Unless the work is completed. right? Af Shabbat lo tikva ela b'davar shenigmara melachto. So maybe the same thing should apply to Shabbat also, but it doesn't fix the requirement of tithing in that situation until the work is done. Amarle, so he said to him, Limud haruch hu biyadenu. Okay, limud haruch is an interesting phrase. Okay, I'm going to translate it loosely. It's a long-standing practice, understanding, learning. Okay, hu biyadenu. Shehashabbat kovat vein b'davar shenigmara melachto. Whether that Shabbat fixes this requirement of tithing, whether the work is done, all right, or not, right? Or bein b'davar shelo nigmara melachto, or whether it's not done. Now, Amar Mar Zutra Bereda Rab Nachman. Okay, Af Ana Nami Tnina. So we also learn Va'od, and furthermore, Amar Rabbi Eliezer, he says also, Omeda Dam Al Hamuktzah, Erev Shabbat B'Shvi'it V'chuli. Right, that a person can stand over the store area, right, on the eve of Shabbat during Shemitah year. And what happens? Why can he do that? And he has to designate it. Tama, the Shvi'it, the Lav Bar Isurehu. Isn't the reason because the sabbatical year, Shvi'it, is not appropriate in terms of tithing? Habashash Neshim.
Using a muksa as a noun, not as an adjective?
Correct.
Muktzah means a place and
Okay.
place thing.
All right. In other words,
Applies
remember,
to
muksa means
Yeah, yeah.
originally set aside.
Right.
Okay, that's the original meaning of the term muktzah. So, in other words, David mentioned that on Shabbos when he tried to point something out. But the point is, if it's a storage area, then that stuff is
Muktzah.
muktzah. It's set
And
aside,
the word comes from this.
right? From that concept, right?
But
Okay,
the,
right? So he says, ha b'shar shanei shavua, but the other years of the cycle, hachinami d'isur, my tama, but then also it would be forbidden. What's the reasoning? Lav mishum de Shabbat kava, isn't it because we say it Shabbat establishes, fixes this requirement of tithing? No, he says, shani hatam, it's different there. Kevan da'amar, because the text says, mikan ani ochel lemachar, because he made an explicit designation, okay, as to what, right? In other words, he made it muchan. So muksa now becomes the opposite of muchan, clearly here. Kava le iluye. He fixed it there on it. In other words, he established it as prepared, available for him. Yeah.
That means that although the normative rule is you first have to pile it up, then schlep it in and put it in the house. By saying these figs up on the roof in that corner are what I'm going to eat, that's it. His verbalization is making it as if that's the Gemar Malacha, that now it's Makuyev in
The same thing as
Trumas
if we
and
smoothed it
Maestros.
out.
Yeah,
Same
yeah,
thing as
good
if he
good
brought
point.
it in.
Exactly.
So,
Very good
so
example.
the only reason that he can do that because he can't take Trumas and Maestros on Shabbos is because it's Shemitah year and that's a loophole. And that's why the Brisa had to say that
Yeah.
after Shemitah year.
Afilu b'chol nami, he says, even on weekdays, right? Ha kamash malan. Here it comes to teach us it's the case. All right, the taval, all right, the tevel, muchanhu etzel Shabbat, right? Because we're saying that it's like untied, that is available, prepared, okay, on Shabbat. She'im avar v'takno mitukan. That if he went ahead and did, okay, establish it, it is considered fixed, established. Okay, just a tiny bit over. Vahalo mutro choser. That's the Gemara, but doesn't, okay, in that case, whatever he had left over after his oral declaration, right? Doesn't that return back to its earlier status? Right? Ushma'inan, and we learned, right? The Rabbi Eliezer, according to Rabbi Eliezer, da Amar, Kol Hecha Demotro, Choser Lo Kava. Okay, that which returns, all right, and goes back, that is not fixed. It's none, as it says, Hanotel Zaitim Min Hama'atan, one who takes olives from the vat, Tovel Echad Echad, Melech Va'ochel. He can take them one at a time, dipping them in salt and eating them. Ve'im Taval, Natan Lefanav Asara, Chayav. But if he takes a whole bunch of them and didn't, what? 10 or more, and didn't tie them, he is kind. And that's where we'll stop right there. We'll pick up tomorrow. Okay? All right, everybody. Thank you.
Have a great week, everybody.
And Shabbos has
All right.
yeshivas.
All right. Harvey, were you on it all today? I don't see you.
And it's Sunday.
Nope, no Harvey.
No? Okay.
Wouldn't have applied, so that he could have taken the garage, so they don't